Yeah, love will keep us together, Lou.
That's right. That's right, baby.
I just love the words of that song. It's like just cracks me up.
I just like thinking of Captain and Tennille. That just
Right.
cracks me up.
That's right. The whole thing is cracking me up today for
Yep.
some reason. It's like,
And I go immediately to Muskrat Love, and then it's all over. I'm lost for like 45 minutes.
we'll have to switch that up. We'll have to have Muskrat Love next week.
There you go.
So, hey, here we are today on Tuesday. I'm so excited. We're at my favorite podcast of the week, which is Makeup or Breakup, which there are other less eloquent ways of saying that, blank or get off the pot.
Right.
But here in this show, we talk about 3 different areas of love, which are my specialties in my coaching, which is, first of all, how to find that date. So finding a date that's worth dating and continuing on with past like week 3 or 2. And then we talk about the makeup or breakup, because once you're in a serious relationship, whether you're married or not, there comes a point where you have to start evaluating if something doesn't feel right. And I always tell people, it seems like 3 times already, and it's only Tuesday, 3 times already within the last like 36 hours, I've said, if it looks like a duck and it's speaking like a duck, it's probably a duck. And people decide in their minds that they're going to give this person 12 more shots, like 12 more opportunities. Like and then the 12 opportunities come and go. And then people are saying, no, one more chance,
Well, see, there's a dividing line. The dividing line is between whether it's scarier to stay the same or scarier to change. And, for many people in most situations, the change is scarier than staying the same. But, as the meme says, when the fear of staying the same is greater than the fear of change, that's when the magic happens, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So today I wanted to talk about just a couple of extra hints in the dating world, because we've been talking a lot about dating. And in particular, for the last several weeks, we've been talking about the, 1,001 plus questions that you need to ask before you get married. Ideally, you're going to ask them before you're even engaged, when you think that things are serious and you've been going out for a year and a half. And you're kind of feeling like maybe this is going to go into something like living together or getting married. So some of the things that I've talked about in the past are, when I'm working with date coaching, when I'm date coaching a client, the number one rule I say is it's all about having fun. It is a business. It is a numbers game. It is perseverance, and it is taken like a job. Just like if you were looking for a job, you wouldn't apply once a month.
Right.
You'd send out 5 resumes a week. So it's the same thing with dating. You get on these websites and you decide, I'm going to write to 10 people a week, or, 3 people a day, whatever it is. We have like a formula, and we determine what seems the best. And then once you're in the groove of that and you understand that that's just, you're in it to win it, and it's a perseverance kind of thing. You have to have a tough skin. At the end of the day, you still have to be able to have fun. And so one of the tips I wanted to give today is moving beyond, which is funny that you said fear, moving beyond the fear of being branded. So an example I wrote down was, one of the things that I often hear from people is they don't want to just date because they fear if they go out with someone, they're going to be immediately branded as a couple. Believe it or not, some people feel like after they date somebody once or twice, it feels like even the person that you've been seeing starts to think you're kind of a couple, because you went to dinner and then the next week you went to the movies.
That was huge for me. That was a huge thing for me. Because almost once you start dating, you feel like there's an obligation to that person. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't feel it's working out the way you should. Right.
And so here's the other thing. They fear that once they go out with someone, even casually, no one else will ask them out. If people see you out and about in the town that you live in, they're going to think you're a couple. Or there could be a friend or a coworker that kind of has a crush on you and you don't know it. But as soon as you're talking about Bill or Jane, they assume that you're now a couple and you're not going to be available.
Right.
My phone is picking up my voice. That's really funny. So I just wanted to mention all that. And the problem is, paradoxically, they don't date in order to date. It sounds a little self-defeating if you think about it, right?
Yeah, right.
Because they hold back from dating unless they can see someone as being the person that they would be a couple with.
Right. With the person they want to risk all that for.
Mm-hmm. Right. But that's the result, right? Is that it's self-defeating and they wait too long because they don't want to be branded. And for the most part, those people with this mentality, they remain stuck. They're going to remain stagnant because they're not dating until they think they're going to meet like someone that hits 98% and that they could become a couple with. Just like social circles, can foster such a mentality as well. So depends on who you're hanging out with. So
see, this goes back to and everyone rolls their eyes when we say it. This goes back to working on yourself, because right there, all those mentalities are mentalities of worrying what other people think, as opposed to worrying to what's good for you.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
you need to learn to prioritize yourself and your own needs and what you want.
Exactly. And one of the ways, so there's a couple of ways to get over this fear of, showing up at parties with the same person, barbecues and things, for like a few weeks or whatever. First of all, get over it. All right.
Yeah.
Move beyond this fear of being branded. Don't allow the views of other people to dictate how you live your life.
Right.
If they don't have anything better to do, like your friends, to be sitting around talking about your dating life and saying, oh my God, first he's a couple for a month and then he isn't, then he's a couple. It's like the whole process is going out sometimes with someone for several times before you determine if it's going to go further.
Right.
Don't let your friends do that to you. And as you date and you continue to go out with other people, they will eventually realize that you're not a couple and you need to just not go along with this peer pressure. Second of all, if you're a member of a group that fosters this kind of attitude, do what you can to change the culture. Speak up, voice your opinion that two people spending time together as friends and getting to know each other is not the same thing as a serious relationship. So
right.
Get over it. It also allows your friends to sort of get off the hook for feeling like they have to like form these friendships with these people. Right. So a lot of times women tend to feel like they have to get to know Sally because you brought Sally to 3 barbecues.
Right.
Yeah, you want to be cordial and stuff, but you don't want to start hanging out with Sally because what if you break up with Sally?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you're not looking for your friends to like engage with Sally the way you are because hopefully you're still getting to know this person and you're not jumping into it as a couple.
Right.
And so what I try to teach my clients is, that's why I wrote about this today, is I try to teach my clients, you may need to be the one that educates your friend circle.
Here's a big mental health thing. And this is a big mental health battle, is you're describing a lot of a person trying to control other people in circumstances outside of their control. And you got to let go of that, right? Your friends, wives, and girlfriends' relationship with the person you're dating is not your responsibility.
Right.
It's their responsibility. I mean, listen, you don't deceive anybody or anything like that, but by the same token, you can't control how they interact with this person.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
When you introduce somebody, first of all, I wouldn't be taking Sally to a barbecue on your first date.
Right.
The first couple of dates shouldn't even be meeting Sally.
Yeah, that first few dates shouldn't be meeting a group of, going to an outing with a group of friends.
Right. Yeah. But even then, once you do bring them to a barbecue, the people that you're dating should feel like they're just in it for like a fun afternoon and there's no pressure.
Yeah.
The second tip that I have is moving beyond the fear of hurting someone. That's a huge hurdle.
Yeah.
That you and I have talked about. And it
was for me. Yeah.
And I deal with that with every single client because I always tell people the reason why you need me is because your engage and disengage gauge is off.
Yep.
Your picker is off. And on top of your picker, which is broken and you're not picking the right people, your gauge is broken regarding how to engage with people healthily and how to disengage. So almost everybody that we know, including ourselves, has stayed in the not right relationship for the wrong reason, which is deep down, they know it's not right, but they don't want to hurt the person.
Right.
I mean, how many times have you seen that with friends where you're like, what is wrong with you? And they're like, I know, but she's a nice person. I don't, she's a single mom. That's my favorite. I'm like, how insulting is that? I'm like, I would hate it if I ever found out that some guy was still dating me when I was single because I'm a single mom. Yeah. I'm like, that is not a good excuse to keep engaging. In fact, the reason why it shouldn't be such an issue, Lou, if you think about it, is because if you were dating a woman with 3 young kids, what do I always say? You should not be meeting those kids for 3 to 6 months.
Right.
Because when you start to get introduced to your date's kids, you're now dating the kids. The kids are hopeful.
Yep.
Kids don't like mom or dad being single. I remember when I first, when I was re-engaged after my first divorce, I remember my son, I was asking about one of the guys that I was dating and stuff. And I said, I think that this is maybe going somewhere. And he goes, I said, how do you like him and whatnot? He goes, oh, I really like him. And I said, well, what do you think? He goes, this would be great because now we're not divorced anymore. And he was like 8.
Yeah.
So in his mind, we're broken when we're divorced, but we're better when we're a threesome.
Yeah.
He missed it. I don't care what kind of weird emails I get for this one, but kids need a mom and a dad. It ultimately, I'm not saying it has to be that way, but ideally
that's ideal. Yes. Yeah.
Right. And I say that because the dad, is bringing different perspectives. The mom is bringing different perspectives. And if you don't learn to disengage quickly and you've already been introduced to somebody's kids, that's such a red flag. It's not even yellow.
Yeah. Plus,
it's a bad thing.
I know no one wants to hurt anybody, but by the same token, this single mother, you're costing her the opportunity to find a better match, right? You're just dragging it out and costing opportunity. Plus, as you just pointed out, the attachment to the kid and putting the child in an attachment cycle is not a good thing either, especially for the wrong reasons.
Right. And so that's why, what do we say? Always date for how long?
Good 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long are you dating before you even get engaged and become a family?
A couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
When people circumvent that, they also circumvent the healthy modeling for the kids and the healthy attachment for the kids.
Right.
So, if you attach quickly, your kids are going to attach quickly. Or worse than that, you're attaching quickly and you're forcing this guy or this woman into your life. And your kids are like, yeah, no, we're not even over the divorce yet, mom.
Right.
Or dad, mom just died 6 months ago. Like, we're not okay. And we're not looking for another mom.
Right.
So you have to be sensitive to that. Kids count. Your family situation and the separation or the last scenario with the last boyfriend or girlfriend has to be taken into account. And I always tell people, this is why you need a date coach.
Yep.
Because if you've been married before and you have kids, or you weren't married and you have a kid, doesn't matter if you were married or not. If you've got kids, you don't have a right to date like a normal single person.
Right.
You don't have the freedom to date the way you feel like. You don't have the freedom to sleep around. You don't have the freedom to introduce your kid to anybody that you date.
Right.
And how many times have we seen that?
I know it can happen so startlingly quickly. And the kids it's an emotional roller coaster for the kids.
Right. I mean, sometimes I've had clients where I find out that they, snuck in a coffee date on date 3, but unbeknownst to me, the guy or the woman said, well, you know what? I've got my kids this weekend. So do you mind just coming over to my house or my apartment? And, someone like you and I would think, well, that's all right because it's nearby. It's not like they're making me drive an hour and a half. Right. Or maybe they do. And the problem is I say, you know what? You just screwed up everything. Do not pass go. I'm putting you into jail on the Judith Love coaching, the 8 coaching game of Monopoly. Geez, that's a good idea. I should create a Monopoly game for dating.
See, now you're talking.
I am. I just thought of that. Oh, I'm so brilliant. I don't know. Things happen after I have a cup of coffee. My ideas just get better. But it's important for people to think about this because it's not, I hate to say this, but let's be honest. If you have kids, and people don't like to hear this, Lou, and I don't care if you've been divorced or unmarried for 20 years. If you have kids, no matter how old your kids are, you don't get to just do you the way you want to do. You just don't.
Right.
I've seen, clients of mine that are in their 60s and they just feel like, oh, my kids are 35 and 40. I introduced them to Bill and I'm like, yeah, your 35-year-old doesn't necessarily want to meet Bill, who you just started dating, by the way, and probably won't be Mr. Right.
Right.
Because you haven't, as your dating coach, I already know you haven't kissed enough frogs. people try to circumvent the process, and they're like, you know what? I don't like this. I'm not comfortable. And you and I would say they don't want to be alone.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so they circumvent that.
It's the rush to relieve that loneliness.
Right. And I think, the reality is the best way.
Especially true with older couples, because older couples are thinking, who am I going to meet?
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. People always think that. Always.
Yep.
They're like, oh my gosh, even people who are like 45 or 50, they're like, how am I going to meet somebody at this point? I'm like, wow, that's
Wow, this person will put up with me. How am I going to meet another person who'll put up with me?
right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the reality is there's several people for everybody. There's no such thing as one soulmate. You may end up dating and connecting with one person who hits all the marks and is like, you look back and you say, that was my favorite person. But the reality is, in a world with gazillions of people, there's no way there's only one soulmate. And if there was, honestly, people would never remarry or date again. So I have to get people out of that, stinking thinking.
Yeah.
So the way that you get out of this, when you're working with me, the way that you have to get out of this is the fear of hurting people is I have to put them through the ringer and they have lessons on how to hurt somebody, which is basically, you're not hurting them. You're just learning how to, what I call engage with several people and you disengage. Because the reality is you're only looking for that one special person, to be honest. You're not going to try to date 20 great guys or 20 great women.
Right.
But you're looking for that one. So if you're going to be meeting 20 to 40 to 50 or 80 people, which is perfectly fine because some of those meetings are just by phone, you have to disengage with the other 79.
Yep.
I mean, haven't you ever felt like that where you're like, I feel this person really, I feel like they think that we're a thing. It's going to hurt their feelings.
Yep. Well, yeah, that was always a big fear.
Right.
Yeah.
So did that ever hold you back? I mean, probably.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of it is keeping appropriate settings. Like, for example, you talk about bringing, third date, going to a barbecue with your friends, or going and outing, with your friends, or, at home with your parents or whatever. Keep it coffee, keep it dinner, keep it, walks, or, some time together, and keep that separation, keep a somewhat clear demarcation that we're just engaging, just you and I right now, because we're still sorting this out.
Right. Because the reality is, and I'm not trying to be negative, but the reality, Lou, is that people have to date several people to find the special one. And I often use the visual. So I call these, sort of like graphical, object lessons. And in the olden days, when people went out to the gold rush and people were going out west, they would stand in riverbeds for day after day after day, like days, weeks, months, like sometimes years.
Yeah.
And they'd never get a piece of gold. But eventually there are people that would get one or two nuggets out of all the baskets that they sifted through in the riverbeds. And so you've got to sift and you've got to look through and you say, you know what? None of these is my special nugget. Toss them back in the river. It's somebody else's nugget, right?
Yep. I think there's a relationship theory of relativity here that you don't engage unless you date a lot of people. And hopefully a lot of us learn lessons. And I know you've run into people who have, and I have too, that keep dating the same person. But you have these relationships and then you walk
the same
away
type of people or the same person?
Huh? Well, no, the same type of person.
Same type.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You come away from relationships and you come away with, hopefully what you do is you come away with things, boy, I like this about this relationship. This is the kind of thing I want. I didn't like this. This is the type of thing I want to avoid. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure everybody thinks that way, but then they end up with the same person often enough. But with dating, what you're going around is you don't know how special a person is until you have people to compare them to. So dating and meeting different people and finding different personalities and how they mesh with you in different interactions. Like you may think you had a connection with somebody, but if you don't date more people, you may find someone with a better connection. Or you may find out, well, that connection wasn't as special as I thought because everybody's kind of friendly and nice. So you have to have people to compare it to, right? Early in dating. I think that's part of it. Many of us are in one relationship for a long period of time. We have no basis of comparison on what's good and what's bad.
Well, exactly. And that's, some of the challenging moments that I have with clients who were married for 30 years and now they've been divorced or widowed, for a few years. And they literally haven't dated since they were like 18 or 19.
Right.
Right. So they don't even feel comfortable with it. But the reality is, nobody's ever super comfortable with it. And especially with the online dating, most people don't like it.
Right.
But as I've said on this show over and over, the reality is what with online dating?
The reality, you got to keep fishing, right? You got to meet a lot of people. Yeah.
Right. And also that the chances of you meeting somebody really great at Starbucks or the post office or at your brother's barbecue is very, very, very slim. It's like -1%.
Yeah.
It's just 0.000.3297654. And therefore, based on research, as well as what we're seeing with people who are meeting people that they meet as, a partner, somebody to date for a long time, someone that they have a good synergy with. The reality is they went online. And so whether they're on match.com or OkStupid or farmersonly.com, wherever they are, it's going to take a long time. And it's just like fishing. I mean, unless you're in like a really great spot, you're usually not going to find the great big fish the first time you fly it out. You're just not. And it's patience. Like look at like fly fishing. People stand in riverbeds for days before they catch something.
Yep.
And what they do, this is another good object lesson. What a fly fisherman or fly fisherwoman does is they settle in, they enjoy the piece of it, they enjoy the challenge of it, and they accept the fact that they're going to stand in a riverbed for several days or weeks, and they may even come back from Montana or Utah and have zero fish to show us.
Yeah, that's funny you say that because it's attaching to the process as opposed to the result. And the result, attaching to a result, forces you to make quick and oftentimes ill-advised choices.
Right.
Because you want to get to the result and you want to get to the result as quickly as possible. And so what you will do is you will manufacture the result in the absence of the result. In other words, this wasn't really a great date or you don't know what the problems are, but geez, date, we got along. She seemed to like me. Yeah, let's, and just run towards it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too, Lou, is, part of that process is slow and steady wins the race. So if you and I met and we talked on the phone and we said, hey, let's get together. I know, you did differently, but generally speaking, so my business model with my dating clients is, we'll say it wasn't me, it was a client. I'd say, you can meet this guy, Lou. It sounds like a good fit, but it's going to be, 35 to 40 minutes coffee only.
Yep.
So Lou might really like you and you might really like Lou, but we don't want you extending it for too long because the reality is if you sit there for 3 hours, Lou's going to get his expectations up. And why wouldn't Lou have his expectations up? Things are going well. You took a walk after you had the coffee and your assumption unconsciously, Lou, is going to be, Jane or whoever my client is, must not have somebody else because why would they be spending that much time with me? And we got along so well.
Right.
I'm sure I'm like in the running here. Right. Yeah. Because most people aren't spending 6 dates for 3 hours a week.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing is you're short circuiting this process and you're giving false hope. And actually, I consider it kind of selfish and mean. It's selfish because you want to hang out with someone for 2 or 3 hours because you're just lonely.
Right.
And it's setting the bar way too high because the odds are that this isn't Mr. or Mrs. Right. That is not your nugget, especially if you just started the dating and you haven't gone through you haven't met 20 people. And this is especially important for someone that's a widow or a widower. So the approach that I take with my clients is you need to be assessing this with me the entire time, before a date, after a date. What do you say? What don't you say? How long is your date? And that's what I coach. And then putting them on the field and taking them off. Yep. But the whole process, Lou, is exactly what you would appreciate, which is honesty the whole time.
Yeah.
So if my client, I'm going to switch it up. Now you meet a client of mine, unbeknownst to you, it's another client of mine, and her name is, Tara. And Tara, she lives close by. She likes where you live. You guys have a lot in common. But there's something about her that you're not sure about. she's not sure about what's going on with you. She's just not sure.
Yep.
I may or may not instruct Tara to break it off, because we sort of, no offense, but I'm analyzing you and the interaction and what was said, what wasn't said, all kinds of different variables for the date. And there's a very good chance that if it was like a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10, that I would say to my client, be honest, just text, or if it was only one date, you don't have to call the person. You can text or email the person and say, hey, I don't know about you, but I'm not sure if this is really a great fit. But thanks for meeting me today. I really enjoyed the coffee spot that you introduced me to.
Yeah.
Notice what I did. I thanked you for the date, but I didn't say you're a great guy. Good luck.
Yeah.
You're perfect for somebody, because people don't want to hear that, Lou. I mean, that's a little too honest. It kind of feels like, all right, so you just said I'm a great woman and I have a lot to offer, but not to you. Like it just doesn't feel right. And it shouldn't feel right, because it's a little bit insulting.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm kind of hinting to you that you're like a 6.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to hit a 10. So you have to be gracious, and there's ways to do it and ways not to do it. But the key is, what are we doing? We're being honest. And even if you went out with Tara 3 times, she's going to give you feedback at the end of each date. I always tell my clients that. Text the feedback so that Lou knows what's going on.
Right.
Otherwise, if Tara breaks up with you in 4 weeks after 4 dates, you're going to be like, what the flip?
Yeah.
We got together once a week for 4 weeks. We went out to dinner on the second one or the third one. Our dogs got along when we took a walk.
Yep.
I don't see where this came from. So one of the honesty things is, when my clients are still dating a lot of people, I have them tell the person at the end of the first date, I really enjoyed this coffee spot. I'm so glad we got together. I'd love to see you again. I'm just letting you know I'm new to the process. That's always a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
I'm new to Match.com. I'm just getting back into dating after like a 3-year relationship. I'm kind of just sort of feeling my way, and I'm going to be seeing, different people. I hope you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Which you should be, but you may say, I don't really want to be with somebody that's dating lots of people. So maybe you say no.
Yep.
It's kind of stupid, because you are too, but give them the opportunity to
Yep.
But the problem is, if you're not honest along the way, you're going to hurt someone. So if you have a fear of hurting women when you're out there dating, which you're not right now, but the fear of hurting them and keeping it going, like you said, it keeps them out of the dating realm, where their Mr. Right could be somebody else who's looking for them right now.
Right.
And because you're afraid to hurt their feelings and you're going to just drag this out, you're not just hurting yourself, because you're staying with the wrong person, which is dumb.
Yep.
Because the reality, Lou, is something that we haven't really talked a lot about, but let's just call it what it is. I'm not talking about you and me at age 10. I'm talking about me in my 60s, you in your 50s or 60s. I don't know. Are you in your 60s yet?
Yes.
All right. So I'm talking about adults.
Yep.
My son's about he's about to turn 30. He's married. But if he was single, I would tell him the same thing. It doesn't matter. You're 30 or you're 60 or you're 80. What is the bottom line? We are talking about adults. And so adults have free will, and adults are freely going on to Match.com and OkCupid and all these different websites because they want to date. Hopefully they want to, meet someone worth, find a date worth keeping.
Right.
But the reality is, it's the wrong attitude to feel like you're going to hurt someone, because at the end of the day, even if they're sensitive, it doesn't matter. They're an adult.
Yep.
And the best thing you could do is teach them how to break up and not be hurtful. If they can't handle it, their maturity level, you don't own their maturity level. Does that make sense?
Yes. Again, you're trying to control something that's out of your control, their reaction to whatever it is you're doing.
Right.
The only time that's a problem is when you're dishonest is too strong a word. But the basis of any good relationship is communication. And that should start from date 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's, like you said, talking about new to the dating game. I'm seeing a bunch of people. I enjoyed seeing you today. I remember telling a date, trying to make everything simple and less problematic for people. So it's like, geez, enjoyed the date. I'd like to see you again, but I'm going to leave that to you. If you want to call me back, that type of thing. so that you're not putting anybody in a decision process, but you're open with where you feel and what you are about it, and go from there.
Right. And I think regardless of who you end up talking to on the phone, because it seems like a good deal or not, seems like somebody, a good potential, regardless of their emotional status, the reality is, by you dragging it out because you feel like they're so sensitive, they're going to like jump off a dock, that is all the more reason to break up with them sooner.
Yeah.
Because someone that's emotionally unstable and comes across as being very needy and says these warning signs, which I call flashing red lights. They're not even yellow.
Right.
Like I remember I had a client who's the woman that he was dating, who he did end up marrying, and it didn't work out. She would say, I just wake up every morning pinching myself because I can't believe someone as nice as you and, as handsome would like date me. I keep thinking that, the bubble's going to burst and you're going to break up with me. I'm like, flashing red light.
Yeah. That's manipulation right there.
It's manipulation, and it's an insecure person. And the manipulation is, he did marry her too soon, and he did go along with the plans because he felt like, well, eventually this probably is the person that I'm going to marry. And I do have feelings for her, but the reality is he wasn't crazy deep in love with her.
Yeah.
You want to at least start with that before you get to the part where you're like sorting laundry together while you watch the 7:00 news, or trying to beat each other in Jeopardy, which actually I enjoy doing. That's like, I like doing those things. So I'm saying before you get to that comfort level, there has to be that spark.
Person that talking with that discussion that she was talking about with that person, I'm so lucky to have you. Someone who, that's a person who also has something she hasn't revealed yet.
Well, and it's funny that you're saying that because you don't know these people, but that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And there were all kinds
because her fear is when he sees everything, he's not going to want to be with her. So she's holding back something. She's afraid of whatever it is about her that might turn him off.
Right. Exactly. And that's exactly what happened. The house of cards, man, it fell like there's no tomorrow.
This is why, just to circle it back around, this is why you date for long periods of time, because you don't know a person until you're in a foxhole with them, until you've gone through some adversity, until you've had a fight, until you're on the wrong side of a disagreement, until one of you has been fired, until you've had to deal with something as a couple. You don't know that person until you've been in a foxhole with them.
Right. Well, and the interesting part about that is that the adversity that they came across was him, confiding in me over coffee one day, like some of the pros and cons that he was seeing, and he was trying to sort of, tease it out a little bit. And I was concerned because I'm like, I don't even know why anybody's talking about marriage here. Why are we even talking about rings and marriage when you've been dating for like 3 months?
Yeah.
And I had a lot of concerns, and I spoke them. Unfortunately, he's a doofus, and he told her about it. Yeah. So fast forward, I was invited to the wedding, but interestingly enough, I was one of the few friends of his that didn't get to speak at the wedding.
Yeah,
which is fine. I was there just to support him. I wasn't there because I believed in the marriage. Neither was my husband, but we felt like, the cards are probably going to fall, and we want him to feel like we've got his back. Not saying that was the right choice. I mean, I guess I could have made the same statement by saying I'm not going because. The other resistance that they ran into was she reached out to our church. We all went to the same church. And the first pastor that she reached out to do premarital counseling wrote back and said, why are we talking about premarital counseling here? I thought you'd only been dating for a couple of months. And she wrote back, yes, blah, blah, blah. I know some people have stated their concerns, but we know each other really well. And we've talked about this for hours and hours a day. Like literally they would have like 12-hour dates.
Yeah.
So to me, if you have to spend that much time talking about like, your lives and all the things about you to make sure that like, you're taking all the personality tests and things, to me, you're overly, you're going beyond, you're just trying to convince yourselves that this is the right thing to do.
That's an unnatural way through that process. The natural way through that process is to date for 6 months or longer. Yeah.
Right. So interestingly, the pastor basically flat out, without getting into arguments, I mean, she would have she had this like long tirade of this is why we are a good couple, and this is why we know that we are, and
Mhm.
like kind of put him in his place. And he's like, he just sort of wrote back like basically like 2 sentences, like, yeah, no, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
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 Premarital counseling is for people that have been dating for a year, year and a half, and are doing it correctly. And,
Right.
I wasn't a fan of that particular pastor for a couple of reasons, but at the same time, like I have so much respect for the fact that he did that.
Right.
And then somehow she just got like the puppy dog, naive, newer, younger pastor who's not that experienced. And he just went along with it and
Right.
premarital counseled them and married them.
Yep.
And I say shame on churches that do that. And it really gives, churchgoers a bad rap. That's when people go, God, that's why I don't go to church.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that horrified me. And, it was enough for me to leave that church because I'm like, I can't be in a church that would support a couple getting married after 5 months.
The whole thing about premarital counseling is counseling. And the first step of that counseling would be you haven't been dating long enough.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But again, she went after, a different pastor who she thought was even more pliable. And it turns out he was. So
yeah, she doctor shopped. She found the diagnosis she wanted to find. Kept going until she found someone who would say the things she wanted to hear.
Exactly. So another tip that I have for today, what time is it? Oh, we have plenty of time. Another tip that I have for today is, it's going to sound kind of funny, but it's kind of along the lines of what we were just talking about with, remember that you are an adult and you're dating an adult who should be able to handle, honest conversations and do them early. Don't be bringing up something that you don't agree with, 12 months later.
Right.
But along those lines, please remember to only date adults. If you're considering whether or not to go, get serious in a relationship, make sure the person you're dating is an emotionally independent adult. So what does that mean? Pay attention to the warning signs that indicate the person is too dependent on mommy or daddy. Date adults only. An adult is someone who has left their home and draws emotional and spiritual support primarily from an adult community, not from their parents.
Yeah.
If the person you're dating appears to be inappropriately supported by their parents, that is a warning sign. It doesn't mean that their support is bad. It just means that it should be appropriate.
Right.
Adults should not be overly dependent on parents for finances, sustenance, decision-making, guidance, approval, spirituality, or anything else in a person's life. If you find yourself in a relationship with someone who has not left home emotionally, you are dating a teenager and not an adult.
Right.
Be careful. Now, how many times have we said, oh, that's kind of interesting that, Bill's girlfriend is living at home. You want to know what the circumstances are. So it could be, Bill
be a caretaking situation. Who knows?
Yeah, but it could be a caretaking situation, but you want to make sure that it's healthy.
Right.
How would you fit into that? Would they be able to leave the home if you guys got engaged and were getting married? Or are you going to have to go live with, their elderly parents? If you are, is there a separate living space for you? So even if, like you said, if there is a scenario like that, Lou, there has to be you have to be looking at it as, hey, am I okay with that or not? It's okay for you to be honest to yourself and say, that just isn't really a gig that I want to get into because I'm only 40 and I'm dating a guy that's 55, making that up.
Yep.
And his parents are very elderly and he moved back in there after his divorce, which is, he needed to save some money. Apartments are expensive. He was paying $2,000 a month. I'm just making that up. He was paying a lot of money to child support and alimony. That's a temporary fix, though. That's not I'm going to live with my mom from 55 till they die, I die. And even if it's something that you say, I'm analyzing this because honestly, Lou, as an adult, it doesn't make me a bad person. I'm allowed to. And if it's not something that I really want to get into, because I just really, making this up, say I'm like, well, secretly my dream is to move to Scituate. And I'm making this up because that's not where I want to live, but I do like it. I want, in my mind, I'm thinking eventually I'd like to meet a guy that would like to live in Scituate or Hingham. Let's just pretend I'm a South Shore girl,
Yep.
I love the ocean. I'm in my 50s. I'm not looking to live in Dorchester right now. I'm looking to live in a pretty coastal community
Right.
in my late 50s and onward with somebody that I can do life with, right? But it's okay for me to analyze this guy, or say it's you. It's okay for me to analyze it and say, it's just not for me. But that would come after talking to you. Like, what are your plans? Are you planning to live there forever? You know, you said in your profile that you're looking to get remarried, because
Yeah.
that you want to look for someone that wants a relationship, not just a hookup, for God's sakes. And so,
It's funny, the last couple of weeks we've talked about getting to know a person, especially in engagement and things like that. A
right,
dating question along the lines of, and this is one of the ways you can do it, and this is one of the questions that will reap a lot of knowledge. In other words, you just talk to somebody while you're dating. If you had to move, where would you move to? And then
right,
you start
that's a
talking
great
about, geez,
question.
I've got my parents. I need to stay near my parents.
Right,
I would have answered, well, first of all, I love it around here. Secondly, I want to stay close to my kids. And, you get insights into them and what their priority list is, what their life is like, what their values are like based on answers to those questions. Those are the type of questions you can have conversations about without the person feeling threatened. Yeah.
right, right. And it's funny because the topic I'm not going to get to today, when I was going to talk about more 1001 questions that you ask while you're dating and
Yeah.
before you get engaged and married. And the section that I was going to take on today, which now I'll do next week, was questions about family and extended family and that kind of thing, because you do want to ask those questions, because it's really important that your ideas and their ideas can sort of come together easily. And I often say, look, you're not necessarily going to want to marry somebody where they're living with mom or dad and your bedroom's going to be next to mom and dad.
Yeah.
Because, mom and dad need extra care throughout the night.
Yeah.
That you might need to get, like, you need to have some conversations about, look, I'd be willing to put, an in-laws apartment over the garage for us, but we need our separate space, especially as a new couple.
Right.
You really don't want to start out that way, Lou. And if you did, it would have to be, you need your own space and you need parameters for us time, because in that kind of situation, if, like, mom just is on oxygen, mom could live, I'm sorry, but, 58-year-old on oxygen with, issues, she could live
Yeah.
another 20 years. I don't want to be negative here, but
Yeah.
you cannot say, well, so, a lot of times friends will say, they'll dumb it down and they'll say, oh, Lou's such a great guy. Don't worry about it. I mean, God, she's on oxygen, for Christ's sake. She'll probably only live for 4 more years. Well,
Yeah.
I
No.
got news for you. Those
Yeah.
people live for 20. I mean, it's just
Yep.
what happens.
But
Yeah.
understanding what a person's priorities are, if it's family, if it's like, I like to visit my sister every weekend, or I'm close to this, I'm close to that. And without judgment, just having that knowledge so that you can put it into the equation and try to figure out whether that works for you or not.
Right. Exactly. So it's important to think about these things. And when you're using a coach like me, believe you me, I am going to take you through these discussions. Right.
Yep.
A third, no, I think it's like a fourth thing that I was going to talk about. Another thing to talk about is being safe. Many people are afraid of online dating for a lot of reasons, but it's usually not, believe it or not, Lou, you're going to laugh. It's not usually a safety issue that they're afraid of. It's just overwhelming. So you get on match.com and people start noticing maybe that you're new or whatever it is. I don't know. The algorithms are in the stars.
Sure,
and you start getting bombarded, right? Really, and they're not really sure, like, how it works if they haven't done it before. So I always find it fascinating that the stress level of, oh God, really? I have to go on like 1 or 2 websites. I'm like, yeah, you do. Randomly, occasionally, like once or twice a year, I might hear of a single woman and a single guy. Like maybe I have a client and I hear of a really great guy. I'll take a shot, because at the worst case scenario, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
What are we talking about if you try it?
What are we talking about if you try it?
Right. Like if I randomly hear about somebody out there that's not it's not an online thing, but like I meet a guy at a business meeting and I have a woman that is sort of his age and that kind of thing.
No, worst case scenario is a bad match, or,
Right.
Or it just comes apart immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
And the key is practice makes perfect. Practice, practice, practice. Dating is a numbers game. We do not just settle on the first person. And I find that the young people are better at not doing that. Older people are just like, yeah. And I say older, like, mid 30s and on. They're like, yeah, I just don't want to be dating lots of people. I'm like, well, good luck, because that means you're going to settle on the first or second person that probably reaches out to you. And that's not healthy.
Yep.
But the fascinating thing, Lou, that always blows my mind is when I ask them, well, what is it about the online thing you don't like? Because I want to help you through this, because that is how we're going to work together. Right.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing, they're not afraid of safety. And I'm like, that should be your only concern.
Yeah.
You and I don't know these people. And even somebody that I meet in a business meeting, I know them. I think they're nice, but I don't really know what they're going to be like I don't know their personal life, most likely. I just think that there's a synergy, that you have similar personalities, or you both like to go to the theater. I mean, not everybody likes to go to the theater.
Right.
But the safety thing is key. And even if it's a blind date, honestly, I set a client up a couple of months ago with a guy from a business group that I belong to. I love both of these people, and I personally could see them together, but I know her better. Him, I just know his personality. I see the nice things that he sees about other people in the meetings. I see how kind he is to everybody that comes into the meeting, especially if they're new to it. And I hear good things about him from other members. But the reality is, I don't know if he picks his socks up. I don't know if he eats without a fork.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's 20 minutes for every date late.
Yep.
I don't know any of that. I just know that, he looks like a duck and he's talking like a duck, but outside of a business meeting, I don't really know if he's actually a duck. So my client has to be, kind of brave, and they usually actually appreciate that, because they think it's way more fun than me sending them on 5 more Match.coms that week. But you have to be safe. You have to realize safety first.
Yeah, we've only got a few minutes here left. I want to get Cheryl's comment, because I think it's important. She says,
Okay.
yes, that I get that 2 years of dating would be great, but when you're older, you think you can judge character better than when you're younger. Well, hopefully you are. Hopefully you can. And when you're a woman over 60, you don't think you have that much time. There aren't that many guys out there that are interested in 60-year-old women, but I've learned my lesson the hard way. Well, think about the choice that you're making there, is that you're rushing to you're rushing into a relationship because you don't think you have time, and you don't think that there's going to be limited interest. In other words, I guess that's the very definition of settling, right? And I don't know if in your 60s, I know in my late 50s when I was dating, it's like, I don't know if I want to settle just because I don't know if there's going to be somebody out there. I remember talking, my girlfriend now, I remember telling her, because I don't need a companion. I don't need someone to sit there with me. I want to make sure if I'm going to have another relationship, because they're a pain in the ass, if I'm going to have another relationship, it's going to be because I want to be with the person.
Right. And when things become a pain in the butt and the other person's acting like a donkey, you're going to want to be able to go to war with them, right? You want to fight together, not against each other, and be able to get through it. Cheryl, that's a really good concern. I understand it. But the reality is, research shows that slow and steady wins the race. And it's all about patience, right? And when you circumvent the process, you circumvent the process. When you don't get to know someone over the course of a year, year and a half, and go through maybe some different situations where you can see them more for who they are, the reality is, and I've talked about it on here before, research shows that the honeymoon phase is not 2 months. The honeymoon phase, Lou, is 12 to 18 months.
I believe it. Yes.
Which means if you get married in 5 to 8 months, you are still in the honeymoon phase. Even if you guys had 6 arguments,
right?
Your endorphins and your mind and the chemicals are still working in a malfunction, which is not thinking clearly, not processing clearly. And
plus you're still dating a PowerPoint presentation. Within that period of time, people are still putting forth an image in the relationship. Nothing wrong with that. It's just a natural way to go about it. But again, like I said, if you haven't been in the foxhole with the person yet, you don't know them.
Well, listen, I kept thinking to myself with my current husband, Jim, I kept thinking, which is kind of true. And I have to wrap up because I have a 12 o'clock call, but I kept thinking this is too good to be true, but I forced myself. Okay. Now I met him when he had just turned 50 and I was 51. And I met him in a time where he didn't want to date anybody. He'd been single for several years and he's like, yeah, forget that.
Yeah.
That last marriage was too much fun. And I'm not getting on that little hamster wheel again.
Yeah.
But because, I had heard about him and whatnot, I asked mutual friends, who's the single guy that's just turned 50. Right. But you would think, okay, at my age, I was in my early 50s. You would think I would know better. And I'd already been divorced twice. But I forced myself to forget about the crap I learned in my 20s from Cosmopolitan magazine, which was, if you don't have a ring on it in 12 months, ditch it.
No, that's crazy. Yeah.
If it's not committed by 12 months, ditch this guy, right?
If they want to put a ring on you in 12 months, ditch them.
Right. Exactly.
More to the point, more accurately. Yeah.
Right. So what I say, exactly, Lou. So what I say is it's not a matter of, why not marry this guy? It's more a question of why is this other person pushing commitment and marriage on me so quickly?
Right.
Because that is a flashing red sign. Like you said, Lou, they're trying to hide something.
Yep.
They know they have to get you to the altar quickly.
They're beating the clock. Yep.
They're trying to beat the clock. And I say, what's the rush? So I personally had to take my own medicine in my early 50s. And I forced myself to not say, because I used to say this to every guy, whether I dated or married him, you have 1 year from today, which was like on the third date. And if we're not in a, conversation of being engaged, I'm probably going to not feel comfortable with continuing. I'm just letting you know.
Yep.
And I'll probably bring this up closer to the 12-month mark. So I forced myself to not rush it.
Yep.
And actually, I had less of an excuse to get married quickly because I was too old to have kids. So I'm like,
yeah.
And men and women are living longer and longer and longer. So the reality is, research shows I'm not dying at 60. So I'm not in a hurry at 52. So we dated for 4.5 years. 4.5 years. We got married at the 4.5 year mark. And it was a year before that, at 3.5 years, that some things that fell into place that I'd never seen him do before with my relatives,
yep.
Particularly how he handled my dying aunt and how he dealt with me and how he dealt with my mom because it was her only sibling, and how he dealt with my cousins because it was their mom.
Yep.
And I said, I remember one day I just said to him, I think we were in the car, and I said, I just want you to know I'm ready. And he's like, whoa, ready for what? Like, what are you talking about? I said, don't do it today or tomorrow, but I'm ready to be engaged. So whenever you feel like you want to pop the question, just don't do it right away just because I said it. And that's how we moved forward. I was ready after 3.5 years, but I hadn't seen any of those things with a death. I didn't see any of it until 3.5 years when my aunt was dying.
Richard says if it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it still might be a goose. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
He also says taking a road trip is a good way to get in a foxhole together. That's self-inflicted. Foxholes are usually stuff you encounter. Or my definition of foxhole.
A foxhole.
An early road trip can be problematic.
Right. Exactly.
And Charles says, yes, Richard, he was a goose, a donkey, actually. So yeah. Want to thank everybody for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks for joining, everybody. I have a 12 o'clock consult with an attorney and a client, so I've got to jump off, but it was great meeting everybody, and thanks for your comments. Nice to see you, Richard and Cheryl. I actually know them. They're two of my favorite people out there. And we should have Richard on as a guest because he's a dating coach also. And it's fun. He's a guy and I'm a woman, and he's younger and I'm older. So there you go.
Oh yeah. Get him on. We want him on.
So we'll have Richard. If you're still watching, we're going to have you on my show. All right. Well, I'm going to jump off. It was great seeing everybody. Be well, be healthy, and come back next week and share this video with everybody. People need to see this.